All right, gang, here we are. Let's start out. We're in chapter 7. We're going to deal with development strategies. Now, in this chapter, we'll look back at what we've done already, and we're still working on developing a solution. Okay? So, at this point, we're in the third phase, and we've done a lot of homework, and we've got the questions answered. At least we think we've got the questions answered. So now we've got to figure out what is the best solution, or start developing what would be the best solution. Now, it could be a software solution, and primarily that's what we're going to focus on. Okay. Now, sometimes we've got SaaS, or software as a service. It's a software deployment model that hosts an application as a service provided to customers over the internet. Now, you'll see that quite often. Applications sometimes that you can access over the internet, it's software, but you don't actually implement that on your device. It's running across the internet. Now, we've got traditional versus web-based deployment. Traditional would be implemented on the client systems themselves, and web-based, it would be on a web server. Now, the two different technologies or types of development traditional development, system designs influenced by the different compatibility issues. It'll run on a local or a wide area network, and it's centralized to that local machine. Now, if something is web-based, it's being distributed to a wide variety of systems. And any changes, if we want to implement changes or updates, if they are web-based, it's easier to roll out because it's centralized on one web server. Whereas if I have something that's on several local machines in a traditional development, we have to make our changes on all of those individual machines. Now, outsourcing, I talk about outsourcing in most of the courses that I deliver. All right. Outsourcing is having somebody else perform a task or service for me. All right. Now, it could be repairing my vehicle. It could be maintaining my pool or cutting my grass, maintaining my lawn. It could be developing software. Now, it could be performing a transaction for me or my business. So there's so many things that we can outsource and have somebody else do it. Okay. Now, outsourcing has become more popular because we'll find an individual or an entity that becomes very good at something, and there's a concept that we use in business called economies of scale. Now, if I do something one time, I've got that initial outlay, and it can be cumbersome to just run one instance of it. But now if I'm doing it twice, I don't have to recreate the wheel and keep from the ground up over and over again. So my second one will be much more efficient or easier to run than the first. And the third, the fourth, the fifth, that initial outlay has already been done. So that's what we call economies of scale. Just because it takes me an hour to set up the first one doesn't mean it's an hour for everyone. It may only be 20 minutes if all I have to do is replicate the initial outlay. Okay. So fees to outsource something, in some instances, the costs themselves could be lower or they could be higher in some cases. But then there's the time cost that we don't factor in as well. If somebody's been doing something and something that we outsource over and over again, they could do it far more efficiently than we would. Now, things that we need to worry about if we are outsourcing something. If you outsource something, you're relying on a third party, another individual or another entity. And we all know what happens when you rely on others. Inevitably, something's going to come up and we end up relying on somebody that doesn't follow through with their obligations. So what happens in a system that we're dealing with in system analysis design, where we outsource some component of development? All too often, that will push back our project as a whole, because that could be on our critical path, and more than likely it is. Security could be an issue when it comes to outsourcing. They could take our technology and go perform their own or create their own company doing what we just hired them to do. They just rebrand it in some way, repackage it, and now they've become not who we're outsourcing something to, but they've become our competition. Now, outsourcing to an offshore or international entity, we've got other things that we need to look at. It may be cheaper. It may cut costs for us. Risks can increase significantly. Now, we're spending money outside of our local economy, and we'd like to try to keep money local. We're potentially losing some of the control over the project, and there are security issues. There are also potential legal issues that come into play as well. A lot of times people don't think about what it takes or the impact of doing business globally. And we're seeing it in the news, at least today as I record this video here. We're better than halfway through 2018, and we're hearing about people doing business with Russians or things of that nature. And it's not a matter of, oh, I did business with that entity, but it's how was that business done? Was it documented? Were all the right channels? Did you do everything through the proper channels, I should say? And sometimes we don't know those channels exist when we go to do business internationally. Okay? There may be a company that we're not legally allowed to work with because of where they reside. And we need to know those rules when we do business internationally. Okay? Thing that we need to look at the most is the total cost of ownership for this system, and try to minimize costs wherever we can without compromising the critical path and the overall efficiency and completion of the project. Okay. So we end up with a couple of decisions that we've got to make. And the primary decision is, do we make or build this solution on our own, or do we buy a canned or packaged solution? Now, all too often, the packaged solutions don't do what we really want them to do. I recall back in 1999 when Y2K was a big thing, a solution that an organization I worked for that was bought and being implemented over $1 million, I think it was $1.2, $1.3 million, for a software solution for a very large organization, was a canned solution or a packaged solution from a vendor that was minimally able to be modified. After it was implemented, in the rollout where it was changing or migrating from the current system to the new system, only then was it noticed that the two systems were not fully compatible. The new system did not do everything that it was needed to do, and it was going to require far more adaptation to be suitable to the organizational needs. So in the long run, it ended up that canned solution cost us far more in time and money than it was projected to cost. Now, all too often, make or build your own costs far more than a canned, but at least you know if you're making your own or building your own, it will be exactly what you want. Usually takes far longer to do. Okay. So we've got here a list of reasons for in-house development and reasons for purchasing a software package. And they align pretty much with what we're just going through. Okay. Here we're talking about if you buy something, you may have to customize it, but it's not always as easy to customize as we may think. Okay. So, the systems analyst role, based on decisions taken by the organization in the decision development process, current future needs have to be considered. Evaluation and selection of alternatives is quite complicated. Forecasting actual costs is difficult. How do we know what something's going to cost when it's an endeavor that's never taken place in the past? So it's tough to come up with exact numbers. We've got financial analysis tools, payback analysis, ROI, and net present value. These are terms, ROI and NPV, that are common to business as well as financial entities. Now, return on investment. If I spend $100, what's that $100 going to do for me? If it's an investment with an anticipation that I'm going to earn more money long term, what is that long-term return? If it's something that I'm not going to receive any money back, what are the benefits or what is the actual return on that? The net present value. It's total value of the benefits minus the total value of the cost. So we've got tools that we can go through and analyze the cost and the benefits. When it comes to acquiring software, now we've got to do a great deal of research, whether it's licensing, maintaining, support, all that, things that you may overlook. We've got to take the time and make sure that those things are being included into our decision. Okay. Go ahead and create models weighting different things, price, completion date, layout, design, references, and score each one so we can compare them. We talked about doing a cost-benefit analysis. Then we'll come up with a recommendation on whether we build or buy. Okay. So, got the trend of software as a service, and if you're in the networking courses, you'll see one of the things now in Microsoft Server 2016, we're doing more and more with containers. We'll have virtual machines and containers, and those containers are what we will run this software as a service on. Okay. So companies choose to whether they're going to deal with this in-house or buy canned packages, and it all boils down to the total cost of ownership. We need to look at payback analysis, ROI, and net present value. We've got, when it comes to acquiring software, there's a series of specific steps we've got to go through, make sure everything's analyzed and documented. That's one of the things that we're looking at step by step. Document, 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 and ensure that all of the available data is being acquired and the information is being evaluated. Okay. So we'll see you in the next one.